Humanities 4, film studies. How got to contact me and tell me why. Um, do you have the book yet? It's going to help you get through these essays. If you literally look at chapter 1, read it right now. Opening sentence is, what's so hard about writing about a movie? After all, we all know movies. Most of us could recite the plot of The Hunger Games. Or more easily, we could recite the Gettysburg, more than we could recite the Gettysburg Address. We know movies because they imprint in our brains visually. Whereas the Gettysburg Address, we have to read it and try to retain it. We know more about the fictional characters who inhabit Middle Earth and The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, than we do about people who inhabit our real life. Why? Why do you think this is? Then it says, I love this. However, when your film professor asked you to write about a film, it's precisely those invisible aspects that you're exposed to see and hear. You need to pay attention. The way the camera moves, observe the composition of light, shadow, arrangement within the frame. That's called mise en scene. It's a French word for what goes on in front of the lens. Think about how the film was edited. Take note of the sound design, if there is sound. In short, consider the elements that make up the film and examine how they function separately and together. And breaking down the film into its interesting parts, you'll be able to analyze what you see. You need to read this. You need to get this book. It's going to help you get through this whole thing, or it's going to be kind of torturous for you. The first step towards critical thinking about any film is to summarize what the film presents on screen. And I'm not talking about the plot. You can construct several summaries depending on your goals. But beware, even the most basic summary, the plot summary, isn't as simple as it seems. It's difficult to write both economically and descriptively to discern what's essentially to your discussion and what isn't. Consider the plot of Orson Welles' Citizen Kane, which you're going to watch soon, not yet. It's got a very complex plot, several narrators. It has 9 parts. It has 5 flashback scenes. It's a complicated movie. What does it all mean? Citizen Kane is notoriously difficult to sum up. Although the following plot summary on Internet Movie Database, maybe you know that. That's a good research tool, by the way. He sums it up here. I'm not going to read it. You need to buy the book. You're trying to solve a riddle. Sound, visuals, acting, script, lighting, themes, and you're trying to put it into a cohesive 3-page essay. When you critically think about a film, do not just summarize the plot. That's just telling me you saw the movie, which I appreciate. As material. You watch a movie for 2 hours. You've got to analyze it. You only have 3 pages. So that means you've got to take the material you saw, and hopefully you take notes, and you set that material down to intelligent segments that make sense, um, but also you're adopting a rhetorical stance. Rhetorical is another word for argument. You're going to take a stance on the film you've watched, The Kid, and you're going to defend it like you made it, and you're explaining it to everybody. So read the first 3 chapters on this, and your next essay will be better for it. Do you need to get this book? It didn't cost much. I got this a used copy, I think, for $11 or something. I think they're $20 on Amazon. Um, I didn't. I don't have expensive books because I don't want to have you all spend any more money than you need to. That's going to be helpful to have that book. The other book you need, of course, is The Story of Film, which this is the latest edition. It's got this light blue cover, which I don't like. Has a lot. I don't care what edition you get. This is the latest. This is the other one. If I could get to it. This is the one I prefer. I don't care which one you have. The Story of Film by Mark Cousins. This latest one just has more stuff about the new movies out, the digital world. But it follows this very similar plot and design. Read that first chapter right now. It's going to follow the documentary I wanted you guys to watch. And the book is more detailed than the documentary. If you read the chapters in the book, go along with the chapters on the documentary, you will be taking a deep dive into what is essentially art form, collective art form in history of man, film. It's that important. Um, that's all I'm going to say about the essay. Give me a couple. So don't be in a rush for me grading the papers. I read each one of them. There's quite a few students in this class, uh, 30 or so. So I've got my reading to do. Usually takes me 4 or 5 a week to grade everything. Have patience. In the meantime, I will assign another documentary to watch, The Story of Film Part 2, which I'll put that in the announcements. I might start a discussion to give you guys something to do, and I won't sign in another paper, another movie until next week for you guys to watch and get to write about. Hopefully by then, you've all purchased this little book. Okay, we're coming out of the Depression. We talked about that the last lecture. Um, the films that were popular in the Depression, screwball comedies, um, musicals, horror films, westerns. These were kind of escapism type films. People were in the Depression. Lots of people were out of work. They couldn't pay the rent, couldn't feed their kids. There were food lines. Maybe you've seen the photographs. Your great grandparents were in the Depression, folks. My parents were in the Depression. Um, Depending on where you were, was worse in big cities than I think small towns, but it was bad all our way around. In the meantime, over in Europe, Hitler is starting to make his move He's starting to invade countries. He invades Poland. He starts bombing London daily. He is bombing the city of London from his country. The English prime minister asked for our help. We really can't give it. FDR, our president, Franklin Roosevelt, wants to do it, but the Congress says no. We're not getting involved. That's their war. We're not getting involved. The American people don't want it. We're coming out of the Depression because Franklin Roosevelt again started a works program and uh, getting people back to work. And what that entailed was infrastructure work. They started building the freeway system across the United States. They built bridges, dams. They put people back to work. And people were ready for big entertainment, big splashy Hollywood movies. And that's what Hollywood gave them. 1939 is considered one of the greatest years in the Hollywood film history. I can't list all the films, but you could go Google it, find them if you're interested. But I'm just going to talk about a few of them that came out one single year. So many films came out. They started to make films in color. Gone with the Wind was a huge blockbuster. Gone with the Wind was based on a novel and about the Civil War. Starred Vivian Leigh and Clark Gable, and it was the Star Wars of its day. It was that popular. Nobody had ever seen a movie filmed that way before, and in color. And they presented you a very slanted view on the South, the Civil War. Yes, the African American, which are slaves, are portrayed in a rather derogatory manner, and that in lies the problem with that film. When you see it now on the screen, wherever you stream movies, they have a disclaimer about, please, it was a sign of the times how slaves are treated. They're treated in a comical vein and kind of like they're dumb. Highly entertaining, but dumb. So this movie was huge. People had never seen expansive shots like that, never seen color like that. Color had been around. Some filmmakers are starting to use elements of color in their films. One of them was The Wizard of Oz. Came out in 1939, folks. Wizard of Oz, if you've seen it, I hope you have. Every kid should see it. Every adult should see it. It's a perennial favorite of us human beings on the planet Earth. And in the early goings of the film, Dorothy, if you know the story, little child Dorothy is a farm girl in Kansas. It's all filmed in black and white. She lives on a farm with the farm hands, with her grouchy Aunt M, and then her horrible neighbor who doesn't like her little dog because her little dog Toto keeps going into her yard and scratching up her vegetables and stuff. And then a tornado hits. Her house is swept up into the sky. And when it crash lands, it's in color. She opens the door to color. She's no longer in Kansas, folks. She's in the land of Oz. It's a musical in that there are musical numbers, one of the most famous ones of all time. Somewhere Over the Rainbow, sung beautifully by Judy Garland. We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz. In color, as long as they're in Oz. But Dorothy's not happy there. She wants to go home. There's no place like home. And so she runs into a lot of surreal imagery in Oz based on a novel, popular children's book. And there's all sorts of munchkins and witches that fly, real riches, and flying monkeys. It's a topsy turvy Uh, Kind of scary world, but also delightful. She makes her way to see the Wizard of Oz to hopefully get back to canvas, and she runs into three fellows that help her. A tin man made out of tin, not a real human being, folks. And he wants to have a heart, which he doesn't have. He's just an empty tin man. She runs into a scarecrow, and the scarecrow wants to have a brain. And he runs into a lion who's a coward, and the lion wants courage. Toto's with her, and they all go on the yellow brick road to the wizard and ask him for these things. In the meantime, the Wicked Witch of the West is out to get her because her house landed on her sister, killed her dead. The sister died with the ruby slippers on her feet. The good witch, Glinda, came down and transformed those ruby slippers off the dead witch's feet to Dorothy. And they're magical. And the wicked witch wants those slippers back. And so she's after them. She sends her flying monkeys after them. She messes with them the whole time. And in the end, gets water tossed on her and melts. And Dorothy clicks her shoes together and recites "No Place Like Home." No place like home. That's the theme of the movie. And she wakes up and back in Kansas. Kansas, I should say, not on canvas. Um, all the years I've watched that movie, I often thought, why does she want to leave Oz? It looks kind of cool on Oz. It looks funner. It's in color. She has magic powers up there, wherever that is. Now she's going to go back, be on the farm, be feeding the pigs and milking the clouds, the clouds, the cows. That's better. I don't know. Depends on if no place like home depends on where your home is, I guess. Okay, so that's Wizard of Oz. It's a rather surreal movie with surreal imagery, and adults and children have loved it for over 80 years. In the same year, John Ford, the great director, Western director, directed three movies: Stagecoach, Young Mr. Lincoln. I've literally forgot the other movie, The Mohawk Valley with it's not quite right. It's about the Civil War and the settlers in the Mohawk Valley of upper state New York are fighting the Mohawk Indians and the British soldiers who were starting up the Civil Revolutionary War. With Henry Fonda, Claudette Colbert. How can you direct three movies in 1 year? Three incredible movies, all diverse, all about America's past. Because at this point in time, Hollywood was a machine, a factory, no different than building Fords in Detroit. He's directing one movie here, and they're building the sets for the other two movies over there. He's directing these actors here, they're casting the movies for these other movies. It's the studio system where the studios did everything. They had actors who are under studio contract. They're going to be in all the movies where they don't have any say over it, not like they do now. And so John Ford could go from one to the next. Literally three blockbuster, huge movies in 1 year. One of them, Stagecoach, changed everything in cinema. Maybe that's the one I'll have you watch next week. It changed how we look at Westerns and the Western hero. It's a complex adult movie not a shoot 'em up about good and bad people. There are no good and bad. There's elements of gray in this movie, and that's what made it a mature adult movie. Starring John Wayne, it made him a star. He'd been movies for 10 years and B westerns, but this was the first one that put him on the map as a star. And that was, that's to start his trajectory. There are other huge movies that came out in 39. You don't need to know them all, but they're listed on Wikipedia. Wuthering Heights, some great English movies by Hitchcock and Jean Cocteau, and these are French director. Too numerous, but possibly 100 of the most revolutionary films in the history of this this thing we call cinema. It's all about to crash and burn with the bombing of Pearl Harbor, but that we're not there yet. So right now, 1939 is a pretty good year. We're coming out of the Depression and we're feeling pretty good. Buy the books, read the chapters. Good luck in your essay. Story film continues next time.